All right, gentlemen, today we're going to talk about wire. All right. So obviously, wire has one of the main things to do need to know about if you're going to be an electrician. So the other main thing you need to know about, and I'll tell you this right now, when you go take your electrical state test, it's going to be mainly on code, like 99% of it on code. So code governs everything the same way as the laws of the United States govern, like the speed limit, and or like you're not allowed to kill people, all these laws that you can't do. You can't steal. They have all these laws. Well, the nation has certain laws for how to put electrical in and what kind of material can be used and where it can be used. Can it be used where it's wet, where it's dry? How big does it have to be? Um, you know, what material can it be made out of? So the code that excuse me, the code that identifies all these laws and these rules that you have to follow, and they're legal, because if you don't do it, you can get sued or lose your license or whatever. It's a big deal. You actually have to. I mean, if you use the wrong size wire on the wrong size breaker in somebody's house and it burns down, well, you're liable for it. This is why you have to be a licensed electrician. But all these rules are written down by the NEC. NEC equals the National Electric Code, okay? National Electric Code. For electrical, I just put electric code. Okay, there's a book you can get, has all this stuff in there. It's about that thick. Well, they made them bigger now, so they're thinner. I'm old. I used to be around when they had the little ones. Anyway, you can take your state test. You got to know this. But the reason I bring this up now is because I'm going to tell you all this stuff about wire. The National Electric Code is the one that came up with all the stuff I'm going to tell you about wire. They say it can, for instance, it can only be made out of these two kinds of material. Okay. Wire can be made out of copper. It can be made out of aluminum. Aluminum. I think that's right. Anyway, so copper and aluminum. Now, a lot of times, like on the wire, it'll tell you, it's got plastic around it, so you can't see on the inside of it unless you look at the end of it. You can't tell what material it's made out of. So the National Electric Code says it has to be printed on the outside of the wire. Also, in the National Electric Code, they may not spell out copper or aluminum. They'll use a symbol for it. So it's important you know the symbols, otherwise you won't know. So copper is Cu, aluminum is Al, all right? So if you see Cu on a wire, it's going to, I had a piece of wire on here that said, yeah, right here. I don't know if you can see that or not. No, you can't see it. Anyway, it says Cu on here. It doesn't tell you like copper. It says Cu, so you should know it's copper. So that's it, aluminum or copper. Now, here's the thing about aluminum. A long time ago, before you guys were born, they started wiring houses and mobile homes and stuff in aluminum. Aluminum wire is cheaper than copper because aluminum costs less, but it's no bueno. It corrodes. They call it oxidation. When oxygen or air gets around it, it corrodes. It makes for a bad connection. So whenever you use aluminum, you have to use grease on it, okay? And that keeps the air from getting to the copper and causing it to oxidize. The problem is with aluminum is it also expands and contracts more than copper, so you end up getting loose connections. And when you tighten stuff down, it's so soft. It's a lot softer than copper. It's just not good. That's why it's cheaper. So if you're running big wire, you might want to go with aluminum. Make sure your connections are good. But according to the National Electric Code, since these houses were burning down, they said the smallest wire that you can use in aluminum is going to be a number 8. Okay, number 8. Now we're going to get into what these numbers mean. Okay, so that's a number 8, and you go, well, what the heck's a number 8? Well, I'm going to tell you what a number 8 is. All wire is measured in sizes. You got different size pipes. You know, you got a 1-inch pipe, a 1/2-inch pipe, a 3/4 pipe. You've got different size nuts, bolts, screws. You know, they got 8, 6s, 12s. They all have all these numbers, you know. And so you got to have some way, like nails, you know. So you want an 18-penny nail, or, you know, the point is everything needs to be measured so people can talk about what size they need. So wire is measured in, it's called AWG. AWG. And that stands for American Wire Gauge. Okay, now I won't bore you with how they come up with the numbers they come up with. Really, all you need to know is give you some idea of what size wire is. I mean, they got wire this little right here. This is number 14. Okay, now 14, this is the smallest wire you're allowed to use in electrical construction. Obviously, your phones, your little chargers, microwaves, refrigerators, washers, dryers, they have littler wires on the inside. That's not governed by the National Electric Code. The National Electric Code here, for what we're talking about, is electrical construction for houses, factories, stores, whatever, commercial, residential, commercial, and industrial. This is just one wire right here. So you can see this is a big wire here. This looks like something like about 500 MCM size. This is actually high voltage wire, 1/0, but 500 or 750 would be about this big. But my point is to give you an idea, that's a number 14 wire. Now, National Electric Code says the smallest wire you can use in a house is number 14. So we'll start with number 14. Now, the interesting thing about wire, this American Wire Gauge, is that the larger the number, the smaller the wire. So we'll just say the bigger the number equals smaller wire, okay? Smaller wire, I don't know. You know what I mean. Smaller wire. So the smallest wire that you can use is 14, which is this size right here. Now 14 is only good for 15 amps. So if you open up your panel, your big service panel or your electrical panel at the house, you see it mainly has 15 amp breakers, because that breaker is supposed to shut off automatically anytime it draws more than 15 amps, because this wire is only good for 15 amps. So if you put 30 amps on here, it starts getting hot and it can catch your house on fire. So that's why 14 is only good for 15 amps, and you put it on a 15 amp breaker. Now, the most of your electrical device, like your lights and your plugs in your house, are going to be 15 amp nowadays. So this will be lights and plugs, okay? Lights and receptacles. Now, the next size wire, we're going to go up going to go down a number and we're going to go up the wire size. So we're going to go number 12. There is no 13 between here. They skip, okay? They're all even numbers until you get to the aughts. But, well, actually, then you get to the bigger wire, they go some odd numbers. But what I'm showing you is mainly just residential. I'm just showing you what they use in houses, all right? The most common wire sizes you're going to use in houses, apartments, duplexes, whatever. So number 12, this is the next biggest size wire, okay? This is good for 20 amps. Now 20 amps in a house, like a microwave, draws more than 15 amps. The bigger ones do. So you can't have number 14 wire on a microwave. Some people do and get away with it. They don't even know it. But my point is, if we're in a house and you put a receptacle in for a microwave, you're going to have to use number 12, or a refrigerator, or a receptacle that is dedicated just for a particular load. It needs to be number 12, and it will draw 20 amps, has to be on a 20 amp breaker. And this is mainly for like microwaves, refrigerators, okay, refrigerators, that looks about right. So, no, it doesn't look right anyway. It don't matter, refrigerators. So the next size wire up from here, not gonna be 11, it's gonna be 10. Number 10. Now, this is good for, you got 15, 20, it's gonna be good for 30 amps. And usually this is a size wire they use for like a dryer and maybe a smaller range or something. So this will be like a dryer. You could maybe a small range, you know, an oven or something. Maybe, well, I'll tell you what, usually 30 is too small for a small range. We'll say for a hot water heater, maybe. This is just general, like if you actually hooking up a hot water heater or a range or a dryer, you know, you're gonna have to look at the nameplate. You're gonna have to see what it draws. But generally speaking, most of your dryer outlets are 30 amps. So your next size up, not gonna be 9, it's gonna be number 8. Now remember, these all have to be copper because aluminum wire, this is the smallest, smallest size aluminum comes in because they don't want you using aluminum for like dryer outlets and lights and receptacles. So 8 is good for 40 amps. If it's copper. Problem with aluminum is it doesn't conduct as well as copper. Aluminum will only conduct 61% of what copper does. So a number 8 copper is good for 40 amps. A number 8 aluminum is only good for 30 amps. Okay? Spread that out. We'll put number 8 aluminum and number 8 copper. Okay, this is good for 40 amps. And this is good for 30 amps. If you're wiring anything for yourself, just stay away from aluminum. Aluminum's only good if you want to save a bunch of money pulling some big giant wire, like pulling a big wire like that. Otherwise, I wouldn't even use it for your own self. But as an electrician, if you're working for somebody, they're going to tell you what to use most of the time anyway. So this right here, this number 8, that's usually 40 amps. This will usually be for a range or an oven, or maybe an AC unit or a heater. And they do sometimes use number 6, okay? And like maybe if you have a real rich house and they got a big giant commercial range or a humongous air conditioner, you know, this is good for 55 amps. Well, really, this is all the common size wires you're going to have in a house. 14, 12, 14 mainly for your lights and your plugs. Your 12 for be like special outlets, microwaves, refrigerators. Number 10 for 30 amp, you know, dryer, hot water heaters and stuff. Now some of these hot water heaters are smaller, but this is just general. Number 8, if it's aluminum, remember, it's only good for 30 amps. So, because usually with aluminum, you got to go up one size because it doesn't conduct as well as copper. So, number 10 and number 8, you know, they're good for the same amount if the number 8's aluminum, but I wouldn't even use aluminum that small. Anyway, so number 8, that's going to be for your range and your ovens and your ACs. And number 6, you know, if you got a bigger range oven or AC, that's what you would use. Now, most houses have a 100 amp service. That means the wire coming that feeds the whole house, or they have a 200 amp service. So really, the only time you're going to use wire bigger than all this is for the wire that feeds either underground up to it or from the service mast head down. And for 100 amps, you usually will use a number 2, which is good for 100 amps, and actually 125, I think. But number 2 is easier to get, or 200 amps, which is going to be, I think you're going to use a 4-aught. Now, once you get past, you know, they really don't have number 1 around. I think you can special order or whatever. But once you get under 1, they start going to aught. They go like 1-aught, 2-aught, 3-aught, 4-aught. Well, this is 4-aught. And then after the aughts, they start going to MCCs, like 500 MCC, 750 MCC, 1000 MCC. So, you know, this is actually high voltage cable, but a 500 to a 750 MCC is about this big. This is kind of in between the two, and it'll be solid copper. So anyway, that's all you really need to know. That's a good overview for house wiring right there. Remember, everything has to be by the NEC, which is National Electric Code. Your wire is going to either be copper or aluminum. It's measured in the American wire gauge, and these are the numbers of the American wire gauge. The bigger the number, the smaller the wire. So the smallest wire, according to the NEC code, is 14, all right? And then 15 amps, and this is what everything you use it for: 12, 20 amps, 10, 30 amps, 8, copper, 40 amps, and 6, 55 amps. So you can see what all these different ones are used for, you know, 14, lights and plugs, and 12, microwave, refrigerators, dryer for the 10. You guys got it. It's all up there on the board. And this is a bigger wire that you would only use just for the service. So that's a good start on wire right there, okay? Real quick, this is not wire. This is called cable. Anything like even extension cord, if you have more wire in one assembly, it's called a cable. Just one of these by itself is a wire. but the whole thing together is called cable. So this piece of Romex, but they call it in the code book, non-metallic sheath cable. So if you got to look it up. Anyway, gentlemen, that should pretty much cover it. And yeah, that should cover it. That's a good start.